All right, everybody. It is Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, and another episode of Conversations with Commodores. And some say, for his generation of Gaines brothers, I may have the most accomplished, most athletic of the brothers of that generation. But I got news for you. He ain't the most athletic of all the Gaines crews. We're going to get into those guys in a little bit. Of course, I've got one of the guys in my signing class, Brad Gaines from DuPont High School. How you doing tonight, bud?
Bernard, I'm doing fantastic. I got to tell you, I was tremendously excited when you called me a couple of weeks ago and asked if I would participate in this. And, unfortunately, you and I haven't had the opportunity to see each other in quite a while and different things like that. Of course, life gets in the way sometimes, right?
It does.
So it was neat to hear your voice, and even, great to, well, I don't know if it's great to see you now because I've changed, and so. But it's good to be here, and I want to commend you on the job that you do with this, because look, it's tough, and really one thing to kind of network, and when you have people that come from so many different areas, and you develop bonds and friendships and different things like that. An avenue like this it's kind of neat. So I appreciate the opportunity, Bernie.
Absolutely. But I do have to, at the start of our conversation, Brad, I have to tell you two things.
Sure.
I'm not going to tell you who texted me, but he said you'll probably be the second best Gaines conversation of the year. And the second thing, they're already rolling in for you, Brad. I got to tell you who's here. We got some of our teammates. We got all kind of folks. We got Patrick Fitch,
Nice.
Bell, Everett Robinson, David Kropp, Rob Chura, Fred Pete. We got like 10 of them already in here tonight.
I'll hear from Dave every now and then. Dave Kropp, he'll send me a nice text if he sees one of my kids or something like that. So, of course, Dave's fantastic, and I was able to see Dave's father, Coach John, when he was at, he was at Lexington. He was at Kentucky, and saw him, or did I see him? Anyway, long story short, when Riley went there, I had a good conversation with somebody. And I said, I said, is Coach Kropp still working here? And I think he said, well, he just retired, and ironically, he moved to Oxford. So I think he's still down there. I hope he's doing well. So, but I'll hear from Dave, and I'll get texts from people every now and then. And Bernard, that's I guess that's my point. Something like this is really, really neat. Good night. I hadn't seen Rob Chura in, I guess, 25 years or whatever it's been. I mean, so it's neat to. I live in Gallatin, Tennessee, so. Of course, Daryl Holt's getting my money off all my insurance premium. So I'll see Daryl, and Daryl's a good friend, and Daryl plays golf up here. And of course, he's the Holt brothers and Goo Baby and all them. So they're all legends up here in Gallatin. So
don't forget SEC referee John Short.
That's true. I'll see John every now and then somewhere in Gallatin. And let's see, the last time I spoke with him, Bernard, I think he was maybe calling OVC games. So I guess, I guess the big leagues called him up, huh?
Yeah. Brad, we also got Tony Piercy out of Florida, number 8 is in the house.
Yes, sir. Shoot, Tony, he run that 9 route, son.
Well, guys, if you didn't play with Brad or didn't get a chance, if you were older or younger, Brad was one of these, I'm going to call him the glue, because he was so athletically talented. Watson, who was our coach, that's who recruited us. Well, let me back up. Brad was recruited probably out of the crib. You got to understand, there were 3 Gaines brothers who all played in the SEC and then all played professionally at one league or another, one time or another. Brother Greg, tackling machine Chris, and then Brad. And Brad and Chris got to play together for 2 seasons or 1 at Vanderbilt?
1 year. My true freshman year, of course, let's see, I came in my true freshman year, and fortunately, was able to play and had a good freshman year. And then, like you say, that next spring, they moved me to linebacker, and and Watson had said, hey, I want to do something. I want to have you and your brother on the inside. And like, geez, Bernard, what, a week before the first game, I broke my leg.
Yeah.
And so really we only played together 1 year, but we were there 2 years.
Oh, all right. Hold on, Brad. Are you sitting down?
I am.
Well, we got Dwayne Jones. We knew Dwayne was gonna be in the house.
Now I see Drano,
Yeah.
all the time. So
hold on. You got Doug Bradley and Slaw Dog in the house.
Slaw tells some stories and
he just
Doug
did. I'm gonna quote him here, Brad. Goob on the dance floor at the Wrangler with the nurse. That's what I'm gonna say.
Is my wife watching this thing? I hope she's not logged on.
Straight face, Brad. We gotta move on. Limitations are up. All right, Slaw Dog.
Let's keep this rated G.
That's right. And I need Slaw Dog and Doug to come on the show sometime, maybe even together. That would be a show.
Well, hey, you know what? That's my point. You develop relationships with people like this. Of course, me and Steve are tremendously good friends. And matter of fact, when Riley was swimming in the national championships in Atlanta last year, Steve was gracious enough to let me stay at his house. And of course, I slept on dirty sheets and everything else. But and Doug, I see Doug and we talk periodically. And when Lawrence brings the UFC show to Nashville, me and Doug and Chris, we always go. And so it's things like this are kind of neat. So you should be commended for what you're doing.
And Brad, your daughter's the SEC athlete. I know Slaw Dog's daughter runs track or ran track at Georgia. I'm not sure what year she is. So second generation athletes all over the place.
Well, stuff like that. Steve, of course, Steve wouldn't have to run anything. He'd go out there and run a mile like Frank Shorter could or something.
Right. That's right.
And I met his daughter and his son. I've met them a couple of times, and thankfully his daughter looks like his wife. So, but I'm sure she's just lighting it up at Georgia. She was tremendously recruited, and I'm sure her son will be as well. But I think she can run forever as well. So that's kind of neat.
Guys coming out of Hermitage, Tennessee, DuPont High School. We got Brad Gaines throwing some zingers out tonight. You're on here. He's gonna get you. But Brad, let's talk about growing up, going to DuPont. I know you broke Chris's rushing record. I don't know if many of you knew Chris was a tackling machine at Vanderbilt, but he was a quarterback running back, I think, at DuPont. And then that's kind of
how at DuPont.
Yeah.
Let's see. In Nashville, 7th, 8th, and 9th was junior high. And then you went to high school, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So I guess Chris was the starting quarterback at DuPont, like 10th grade, 11th grade. And then they moved him running back 12th grade. Kind of the same way after like the first half of the first game of the year, they put you at tailback because you can't move the ball. But same thing happened to me. I was the starting quarterback my 10th grade, 11th grade, and then tailback my senior year. So, that was kind of how that came about. But
even before that, you had Brother Greg kind of paving the way. But what I want to know is, how did you two end up at Vanderbilt, but your brother, the oldest brother, ended up in Knoxville?
Well, when people ask me that, I tell them, I said, he didn't have the grades to get in Vanderbilt. But you know what? It's one of those things, Bernard. We are such a close-knit family, and we still talk every day, multiple times a day. So when Chris went to Vanderbilt, even though I was being recruited by all these different schools, I knew where I was going to go because I wanted to play with Chris. And Bernard, it's totally different now with NIL money, and now you got to factor stuff in like that. So it's the recruiting game's totally changed. But I was telling the neighbor, they were talking about a kid being recruited, and I said, you know what? if you're in your hometown, if I would have went to Alabama, if I would have went to Alabama, I would have been just another good football player from out of town.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
I do.
But I'm from here. My family's from here.
Mhm.
And I had a nice career at Vanderbilt, and you meet so many people. I mean, I can pick up my phone right now and call if I need somebody. There's a lot of people I can reach, right? So, you know, fortunately, being the youngest of four brothers, I guess what, fortunate to get that knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
kind of neat.
But Brad, you also earned it on your own because you had natural ability and skills. But what you just mentioned, Brad, is not a lot of people know that there was a fourth, or there is a fourth,
Sure.
Gaines brother.
Yeah, Jeff.
Jeff is the one that not many people know.
Well, and you know, and was a phenomenal athlete. Even now, you know, we'll get games that Chris or Greg or somebody calls and say, "Hey, let's meet at the bowling alley," and all four of us, and you know, we like to wager a little bit, and so and it's all still a competition and a
I was
grind.
going to say those competitive juices never go away, particularly
Oh man,
brothers.
it's hey, I can remember when we had those racquetball courts, and Dwayne will tell you this, you know, whoever lost, you'd have to get down at the other end, everybody to get to fire a shot of a racquetball at you, you know. So you miss those times, Bernard. You really do. I tell my kids all the time, you'll never know how, you know, kids today, you got the telephones and TikTok and all this stupid crap. And it's just, they'll never know what having real fun is. It's kind of sad, actually, you know.
But I'll say this, and I do have some great questions. I want to talk to you about your parents and their allegiance to different schools at different times.
Sure.
You know, Brad, our children, Bradley and Riley and my girls coming up through, that's all they knew was the electronic age. You know, we as old guys preach about how simple life was, and landlines and bicycles and all that. That was our experience. Now you talk about that, they just roll their eyes. They're like, we don't want to hear that crap. at least that's the way mine talk.
Well, I mean, I guess I can say it, but you know, hey, I had to call you before we went on here. I'm calling you, hey Bernard, how do you log on to Zoom? You know,
You're not the only one. You won't be the last.
I have to call my kids and log me on the computer. I'm going to tell you a quick little story since we got time.
Yeah.
So I'm a freshman at Vanderbilt, and Dwayne, we're in a computer class, intro to computers or something, you know, I don't know, something. And the teacher comes by, and you have a partner, and Dwayne's my partner. And she says, and I'm really trying to make her think that I know what I'm talking about, right? And I ask her a question, and she comes over to us and she says, reboot your computer, cut on your computer. And I'm like, Dwayne, I got to tie my shoe, cut that computer on. I didn't even know how to cut the computer on. But anyway, hey, I tell my kids, I say, look, all you got to know is look on that wall, and there's my sheepskin, son.
You know, it's fake it until you make it. And when you go from high school, where you know all the plays and the game is simple by the time you're a senior, you're dominating. And then you get into Watson Brown's offense as a pure freshman. You talk about a leap.
What a great point you just made, because, you know, when you play in Nashville, and at the time it was, we had 6 plays. They'd toss it to me to the right, toss it to me to the left, fullback lead to the right, fullback lead to the right. And if we passed, I went to quarterback and we did a bootleg or something like that. And so when I get to college, and you're learning blitz pickup and cover, and if the guard's covered, the center's open, this guy rushes, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm guessing. I'm guessing of what to do. And Bernard, I'll never forget my true freshman year. The first game that I started. I think I came in and I worked my way up the depth chart, and I was backing up Goo, and Goo got hurt. So I'm starting against Georgia and Bernard. Of course, I'm not going to tell anybody. I don't know what the heck to do, and I had no idea what to do. I mean, I'm writing everything on my tape on my arms of what to do. So it's that learning curve. It was so hard. It was hard for me. And, you know, when you're having to think, and everybody that's watching that's a player knows this, if you're having to think about what you have to do, you totally lose your athletic ability of what you can do on the field. So, you know, those things like that. But once you get it, you know, it's bang, bang, bang. Same thing as a quarterback. I can imagine being in a quarterback room, you know, with Watson's offense, because Watson's offense is, you know, 20, 25 years ago, that's what they're doing today, right? I mean,
and Brad,
probably
remember the playbook was that thick.
Oh yeah,
it was hundreds of pages. But you know, you came in that Georgia game, and I think Mark Ratcher was the quarterback. It was before he got hurt.
Ratcher was,
and maybe Daryl Holt might have been the center or one of the guards.
Daryl was a center.
Yeah. So you had some experienced guys, but even with that, even when you're huddling up or walking to the line, Ratcher, they can only tell you so much. You're so right. You got to think through the progressions. But, and here's my question along those lines, your freshman year, do you remember a point, Brad, where the game slowed down for you, where you were more comfortable?
Yes.
Where you were just reacting athletically and not having to think progressively?
Yes. And, you know, it got to a point to where, you know, it's hard for when they say, look, if this guy's lined up over the guard, and we were kind of running a semi wishbone or something. So the ride's going to be a little bit more off hit to the right, you know, in between the guard tackle. If the guard's uncovered, they're going to double down on the nose or something. It's going to be in closer. And then all of a sudden it just clicks, you know, it just clicks. So until that happens, you're really kind of playing at what, 70%, you know?
Yeah. Brad, I want to backtrack just a little bit. When you were maybe junior high, early in high school years, you got Greg still maybe at Tennessee, maybe he's gone off to the Seahawks. You got Chris entering Vanderbilt, because there had to have been a year or two, I'm assuming, because I don't know the age gap between Greg and Chris. Were both guys at their respective schools at any one given year?
Well, let's see. I was young when Greg went to Knoxville. And so I'm thinking, Bernard, maybe my 7th or 8th grade was like his rookie year at Seattle.
Okay, so Chris was probably still in high school at that time.
When Chris was a senior in high school, I was in 9th grade.
Right. I knew that there was a full 3 years between you guys. So here's my question. Did your parents ever have a torn allegiance about which school they were rooting for? Or by the time Greg left, it was now time to root for Vanderbilt?
No, not at all. No. And I think you can ask every parent that you can ask the Kelsey mom or whoever that.
Sure.
I mean, you're going to pull for whoever your son is.
That's right.
Where they're at. So,
yeah.
But we lost our father last year, and you know, and he was the man, and you know, he was just such a good person, and he kind of showed us the way about hard work and stuff and different things like that. So, you know, we learned that from him. Of course, you know, he was brought up tough. He was brought up in, you know, he didn't have anything. He didn't have any money. And, you know, I tell my kids, hey, I'm fortunate that I can give you some of the things that I didn't have, you know, because Bernard, it was, a lot of people don't know, but we had a 5th older brother that was, died in a car accident when he was very, very, very young, when he was 4 or 5. So in essence, there's 5 boys, and my dad worked at DuPont at the plant. And so, man, 5 boys, your dad's making, just average money, regular money, but we didn't have cars, and you know what the heck I drove at Vanderbilt. And even now I'm driving a car that don't have a fender. And Daryl Holtz will tell you a story. He loves telling me this. He said, I live in a pretty nice neighborhood. And Daryl Holt come up to me one day and he's laughing. He goes, I tell you this, Brad. He said, this guy came up to me and said, hey man, Brad Gaines is living in Gallatin somewhere. And he said, y'all there? I said, yeah, I know. He said, man, I think we need to help him. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, I saw him at Publix, and he was in this old beat up car and clothes all in it and everything. He said, I think he's living in his car. Daryl gets a kick out of that. So, hey, it's like I tell my kids, stuff is just stuff. I mean, I'm thankful that I didn't grow up with a bunch of stuff. We had what we needed. The milkman came to our house twice a week. We had things that mattered.
Yeah.
We didn't have, of course, when we were growing up, it was the football games, that you held in your hand, the Mattel things or the Coleco or whatever. And I didn't have that stuff. We just used somebody else's and we just didn't get things. We wasn't given stuff, and we worked for it. So
you earned what you got.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't trade that for nothing. You have so many kids now that just get, they expect stuff. And maybe that's our culture now. I mean, and I can't say, because I do the same thing to my kids. So, I've got TVs and whatever. What's the game they play now? The video game.
Call of Duty, just stuff online.
Just whatever that PlayStation, whatever it's called. I honestly can say this. I've never played one of those games in my life. One, I wouldn't know how to log on, but anyway.
Guys, I got Brad Gaines out of DuPont High School, class of 86, came in same signing class as me with Watson Brown's first year. And I want to talk a little bit about that, Brad. Then we're going to go into the Vanderbilt years. But with you growing up and 3 years behind Chris signs with Coach Mack.
Yep.
And you start going to the Vanderbilt games when you're in high school.
Yep.
But you were nationally recruited. You had Texas on. You had a lot of those power conference schools who wanted your services.
Right.
But as you said earlier, I think the overriding thing is you wanted to play ball with Chris.
Yes.
Is there any other factors that might have taken you to Texas or to go play somewhere else that you considered?
You know what, Bernard? Not really. I mean, if I would have went to Texas, and I would have, you'd have probably been miserable. I mean, you're away from.
Yeah.
I say that as, Vanderbilt's trying to recruit a kid from Chicago or, or something like that. But it
like Chris Krause.
Like Chris Krause or Chuck
who's on
or Doug Bradley.
Bradley.
All that clique from Kazanovich, all that whole, group from Chicago or Illinois or anywhere, or Steve Law from, he's 5, 6, 7 hours away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of a big decision for an 18-year-old to go somewhere, far away from home. So it was kind of easy for me. And like I said, I knew the benefits of, look, if I go to Vanderbilt and have a nice career, I mean, you can think about what happens after, right?
Oh yeah. But on the other hand, how close was your home to the Vanderbilt campus?
What, 20, probably 20 minutes.
Probably closer.
Me and Chris are,
well, I was going to say even closer than OJ Fleming, who's on with us from BGA.
OJ was,
or Joe Peebles from Oakland.
That's right. Joe was
all you guys are Metro Nashville guys.
So, OJ and, coming out of Brentwood or, BGA, that's Brentwood. So that's 10, 15 minutes away.
Yeah.
OJ's Murfreesboro, 30
Yeah.
minutes. Old Hickory's, past the airport. So
I guess my point being is I know Vanderbilt has to recruit nationally, but there's a lot of homegrown talent that Vanderbilt has also been able to bring onto campus.
Bernard, even more so now, Nashville. Nashville's it's a real metropolitan city now. I mean,
it's exploded since we were there.
It's nuts. And I don't know when the last time you've been here, but if you drive around the loop downtown, you'll see 10, 15 cranes up in there.
Easy.
Hey, probably 80% of them are Gromos's company.
That's right. Brad, to me, and I come up to Nashville a few times a year. I'm coming up at the end of the month for the Georgia baseball series. But to me, Franklin begins the Nashville metro area. And it just goes on and on and on.
Well, I mean, you can even coming from where you're at, Bernard, if you're coming up 65, now it probably starts at Spring Hill. I mean, it really does. Because when you were here, it was Brentwood. Cool Springs wasn't even built yet.
No, it was horse pastures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, you drive through there and it's like driving through downtown Dallas or something. So,
all right, let's shift gears a little bit, Brad. I want to take you on campus.
Okay.
Who are some of you running around?
What's campus?
Yeah.
I never saw campus.
Besides Slaw Dog, besides Dwayne, besides your brother, who were some of your other running around buddies?
Mike Skaggs, of course, Ken Pruss, Kenny Pulse. Kenny Pulse was, he was from Whites Creek. So we battled in high school.
Yeah.
And we always maintained, a great relationship.
In Pulse, a Metro police officer?
No. Pulse. I'm gonna go through. He started out Metro, and then he went to the federal route. So
okay.
I mean, he's, if I tell you any more, I'll probably get a M16 through my window or something.
Knock on the door.
Yeah, but he's had a tremendously successful career in that field, and he's just been a great friend, and I love his mother. She was always so sweet to me. And let's see, if my freshman year. When I came in, remember we lived in Branscombe.
Oh yeah.
And so my roommate was the tight end from Chicago, dark hair, flat top.
Did he stay or did he leave?
No, he left. Did he stay?
Chris Twist from Florida.
Well, me and Twist ran around a little bit. Yeah, I like Chris Twist. Kubo.
Dwayne, who are we thinking of? We're drawing a blank.
His name was Kubo.
Oh, good gosh. I forgot about that because Kubo ended up being my roommate after a while because we switched around a little bit.
Yeah, he probably didn't. He probably was like,
I forgot about that. No, Coons and I are still close. How in the world did I not?
He was probably like, I got to get out of this hillbilly's room,
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
And so that's what it was. We switched up roommates.
That's right.
And then Twist came in. Was Twist your roommate?
No, I started out with Jim Beatty from St. Louis.
Right.
He and Thor ended up rooming together next door to me and Kubo.
So Kubo, I think Kubo wanted out from me. So I traded him to somebody and I got Twist.
Well, your accent and Coop's accent were not exactly
a little bit different, and he'd have groceries and stuff, and I'd probably raid his groceries.
That's right. Well, Brad, what was it about playing ball at Vanderbilt that you enjoyed? What was good for you? What are some good memories?
Well, it's like this, Bernard. I hadn't thought about this stuff in 25 years. Yeah. So it's kind of neat to talk about that. So next door to me was Stump and Pulse, and they'd be blaring that music all night, and I'm like, man, cut that crap down. but
Couldn't get any sleep.
it's just stuff like that. It's those, and of course Dwayne, he can attest to some of the academic stories. So
he's asked politely not to talk about that tonight. We'll save that for the next.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Hey, I don't want to get Vanderbilt in trouble.
Or you, but the statute of limitations, we're old enough. Statute of limitations we're good.
Statute of limitations is over, but I was saying the NIL deal ain't no problem now.
That's right.
Never mind.
Well, it's, when you, and I'm sorry to skip around, but I got so many good stuff.
Oh man, this is fun.
When you were in 10th and 11th and 12th grade, and you're starting to get recruited, and Coach Mack is at Vanderbilt, and your brother's starting to do good things on campus, but then Mack is gone and Watson comes in. And I knew, or at least I assume you knew of Coach Brown or had heard of him in the early 80s, being around the program, and knew that he was a quarterback and beat Bama in 69, all that.
Sure.
But when a new staff comes in, do you remember having concerns or conversations with Chris or anything along the lines of, what's this about? We got a new coach coming in, a new staff coming in. What are we going to do here?
No, because, of course, Watson has a tremendous name. Mm-hmm. Watson was the it guy at that time nationally. And I can remember when I was probably in junior high, we'll just call it like, the air raid or whatever,
Kurt Page and Watson, Taylor.
Watson was the first guy to start slinging it around everywhere. I mean, he was the first guy. Yeah. And so, I remember you're in junior high and you had these posters. I remember the one with Witt and who had been Norman, Jordan, and maybe Arnaz Perry and some of these, guys, Chuck Scott. And so Watson leaves Vanderbilt and he goes to Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I remember being at the Vanderbilt game. I was probably Chris's freshman year or something. Mm-hmm. They announce over the thing scores of the day, how they'll do, and so-and-so LSU's beating so-and-so 21-14 or something. And they say Cincinnati is beating Penn State. And that's like his first or second game, and the crowd went crazy. So it's kind of like an epiphany of, look, him coming to Vanderbilt is the progression that was going to happen. Everybody that you want to go back to where you played, right? I mean, there's a reason why, like Clark Lee, he played baseball and football at Vandy, and I'm sure it's so enticing. Everybody wants to go back to their alma mater and win, right? Yeah. So that was the thing with Watson. And to say, I can remember I was down at Ole Miss watching a recruit down there. Mm-hmm. And they're playing Vanderbilt, and I'm on the Ole Miss sideline, and Coach Mack walks up to me and says, "What the heck are you doing over here?" And so when Watson came to Vanderbilt, that was kind of actually one of the enticing things for me, because you got a coach that's on the cutting edge, and he's coming back to his home school and different things like that. So I mean, that's kind of one of the things. So that was neat for me, Bernard.
Brad, and I didn't have the history, of course, with Watson or Vanderbilt, and I was recruited pretty late because I just got on his radar. And remember, he came in pretty late and recruiting late.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And when I come up for the visit and he gives me the offer, I'm jumping for joy because I know what kind of offense and what he's known for.
Right.
And that was exciting. And they made a big deal of his homecoming. Now, we didn't have all the pieces in place to be winning records during our time, but there was a lot of fun to be had, I would say, in some of those games. And that's where I want to go, Brad, about the games. Once the game slowed down for you, it then probably became fun again. Not that it wasn't fun, but more fun, because nobody liked practice, of course. What was it about the games, the atmosphere, being in the moment as an athlete competing that you really just thrived upon, that you really just enjoyed?
Man, you know what, Bernard? It's kind of like when you go to a horse race.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some horses, man, they know when it's Kentucky Derby time,
Mm-hmm.
they show up. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you'll hear these trainers, or they'll say, man, he's a game day horse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he shows. And all that whole thing, the whole thing is fun. I was riding with my son today, and we were actually going to work out. And so Top Gun song came on. Kenny Loggins.
Yeah.
He said, hey, did you see the new Top Gun? I said, I hadn't seen it. I said, but I saw this Top Gun when heck, they probably don't even, teams probably don't even do it anymore. You know, Friday night we'd eat supper at Lowe's. Didn't we eat at the
We did.
Vanderbilt Plaza or whatever, Lowe's Plaza, whatever
We
it's
did.
called? We'd eat supper. You'd go to the movie, right? In my freshman year, I said, man, I think I saw Top Gun at the, you know, when you go watching, you'd get back and then you'd have a snack, your snack and devotional and all that stuff. And then, you know, the next morning you'd wake up and you'd have a meeting and a walkthrough, and then you'd eat breakfast and, you know, that old standard pasta and them old green beans and all that stuff. So
Oh, Brad, you're cracking me up. I'm loving this. We got Brad Gaines. He came in the class of 86, the same year that I was there, and a whole bunch of us. We got some more folks who've rolled in. Let's see. We got Tyler Chastain, who was with us. Hey, Tyler, congrats again on Huddy getting married this past weekend. Chris Krause, Joe Peebles, Andrea Poole Kane. That some of them had already rolled off, Brad, but we got a bunch of folks. Oh, we got one, the beloved Keystone Cops. If I say Billy Smith, what comes to mind for you?
Man, the best. I'll tell you what comes to mind, him, and of course, Billy. I would absolutely do anything for Billy. And, you know, of course, we lost Chief Russell, you know, who's, hey, probably Billy's lifelong best friend.
Yeah.
And so me and Chris, and we were able to visit with Billy at Chief Russell's funeral. But Billy's probably still got a stack of tickets in his car that I've given him that he used to take care of for me. Oh, so it's relationships like that, you know, that mean something. I know that I could call Billy and he would be there for me. And Billy knows he could call me. Or Steve Law knows, or Kenny Pruss knows, or anybody. That's what's that's what happens, and you develop these relationships. So we'll see how Daryl Holt, when we just had this storm come through, if he can get me a new roof on my house.
Well, hold on, Brad. We got Pat Akos. Hey, Pat. Luke wants to know. Cracking me up. Did you ever give any of your professors an apple?
Man, Bernard.
All right, we can move on, Brad.
So my kids were saying the other day, somebody was asking me, and, you know, and they said, what did you get your degree in? I said, I have an engineering degree. And they said, really? What? I said, physical engineering. You know, what? I said, it's a PE degree, but that's what it stands for, you know? So, hey, you got to work your way through. I'll tell you this story. I forgot what even the professor's name was, but he was a little bit older, and I wasn't doing too good. So I would take him an apple. I'd take him stuff, bring him into class and stuff. And I think one time I left him tickets for the Alabama game, and I took him a jersey and stuff. And You know, because I was taking the class pass fail. All I had to do was pass it. And so I remember getting a phone call from like his aide or whatever they call him, you know, the person that sits there and helps them. And they said, can you come pick up this jersey and these tickets and stuff? He can't accept that. I said, well, why? Well, that's just not ethical. I said, what? I'm not asking for anything. He's just a good friend of mine. I want him to go to the game and enjoy himself, you know. So needless to say, it didn't work. But anyway.
Brad, you've gone through playing on the highest level in high school. You played in the toughest conference in the SEC. You briefly played in the CFL, but that's your career. Mm-hmm. It's a whole different ball game when we as parents have our children competing on their highest levels. And I had a daughter who played lacrosse in college. You've had two children, one a highly successful swimmer at Kentucky, and Bradford's a quarterback right now, I guess NAIA level in Kentucky.
Well, I want to commend you, you know, for you being a single dad and what you had to go through. That's tough. And I can't imagine that. I can't. You know, we've lost some members, some family members in our family as well. So, but to be a young husband and to lose your spouse, and for you to have to raise girls, that's just, I tell you, that's admirable, man, in itself. So,
thank you.
You should be commended for that. But I get more nervous. Mm-hmm. Well, and any parent that's watching, Steve Law that's watching, Dave Crops that's watching, Chris Krause or Pat Akos, and which I love Pat. I hadn't seen Pat since I left, but what a good guy, and love Chris. And is Chris, see if he'll text you back or however you do it, if he still talks to Noel Wells.
Chris, if you're still there, bud, let's hear from you. But here's my question. At what age for both your respective children in their progression of their athletic careers were you no longer permitted by them to coach them?
Okay.
The relationship, because it happens to every parent.
Absolutely. And even in parenting, you know, it's well, I'm going to, like today. So Bradford's home for spring break. Mm-hmm. And he went and worked out with Chris today. I went and took him with Chris, and he's back there right now, sick. You know, he's back in his room right now, sick. And Chris just tore him up, you know, deadlifts, the whole thing. And you know, Bradford's like coming home from college, just fresh, you're working out and stuff. And Chris still tore him up, you know, just tore him up. So that was kind of,
you know how quarterbacks are with workouts.
Oh, exactly. You know, but you know, as a parent, and I get more nervous watching my kids than it was for me. Every time Riley would swim, and you know, but I would always tell her, hey, just remember, you get on the blocks, and I'd send her a text and stuff, and I'd just say, hey, just remember, you're a Gaines and we spit. You know, and that fire up. And so we'll talk about Riley first. And, you know, she's had she had a tremendously successful career, and she's a 10, 11, 12 time All-American, and still holds a couple of SEC records that she set last year. And, you know, she's doing things politically now that I'm proud of. And she, when all this went down, that's what I was saying. I was spending the night. I was staying with Steve in Athens, and driving into Atlanta and watching her swim. And that's when she swam against, you know, the male, and when all this stuff started. So,
right.
But she came to me after, and I said, look, here's how this is going to go down.
Yeah.
I'm your dad. I love you. I'll support you anyway, you know, however you want to handle this. But here's how this is going to happen. an athletic director it's you kind of got to walk a fine line.
Yeah.
And look, let's just call it what it is. Vanderbilt's going to be a little more liberal than UT is or Ole Miss is, and that's just a fact. That's just a fact of how it is. So, the university's president at Kentucky,
Mhm.
I said, he's going to have to, but man, her AD
Mhm.
is absolutely phenomenal and has been so good to her at Kentucky and supports her in any way and everything that she does. So, she's had a good support system with that, and I'm proud of her for for
Brad,
taking the stand on something.
well, I was going to say, not just from an athletic standpoint, but for even more importantly, everything that she's done and the way she's handled it out of the pool, because that's way beyond sports. It's way beyond competition. So I know you're proud of the way she's handled things.
Well, look, I have tried to raise my kids the way I was fortunate to have two great parents.
Mhm.
So and the one thing I never wanted to do was embarrass my parents in any way. Now, there's people that are on your list of who's watching I did some pretty crazy stuff and a lot of stuff people don't even know. But when you grow up with five boys in the family, you're gonna get a lot of that. But hey, I've always tried to raise them in the church, know what's right.
Yeah.
You're not gonna lie. And hey, well, just like I believe in discipline. I was disciplined.
Mhm.
And I try to do the same thing. Look, my eighth grade daughter right now, I've got her phone and she ain't getting it back, so she's done something, nothing bad, but I don't want her to hear. But
Now she may end up watching this video later
she
on.
needs,
Yeah.
you need discipline.
Yeah.
And I think that, a lot of what's going on when the world, look, well, I ain't gonna even get into all that, but
Well, let me pause you because I got a whole bunch more Commodores have just rolled in, Brad.
sure.
We got Coach Jeff Madden is in the house.
Mad Dog.
We got Coach Gary Shepard is in the house.
Hey, tell Shep, me and Steve Law was telling me I'm gonna come up to Nashville. We're going to Shep's restaurant, which everybody has told me the best food in
Hey, I can attest. Drano and I went last year.
Really?
We sure did. We had an awesome dinner and saw Coach. We sure did.
But see, that's one of my points. How many, there's not a lot of people. Gary Shepard was like a real guy.
Mhm.
I mean, me and Shep had a great relationship, and Chris, and because he's a normal guy,
Oh, we got Sam Chalmers, he was one of our younger teammates, but he's in the house. Paul Morgan. Oh man, you got all kind of love tonight, Brad. That's awesome.
I need somebody to love me.
Oh, Brad, they're all some good stuff. Guys, I got Brad Gaines. He came in with me in the fall of 86. And Brad, I want to touch on a topic that has been close to your heart now for 30 plus years. And of course, I'm talking about the Ole Miss game in 1989. We were there for homecoming. Most of the folks who are close to our age, maybe even a little younger, know what happened, that Chucky Mullins, defensive back for Ole Miss, took a bad angle, tackled Brad when Brad was catching a pass from John Gromos. Chucky hurts himself. He ends up getting paralyzed, and we know the rest of the story. But Brad, you have lived with that and close to your heart all these years, 35, almost 35 years now. And it's commendable how dedicated you have been to that man's memory and that family and the events that have occurred. And I'm not here to ask you to relive any of that, but what I want to ask you is, have you gotten to a place in your life where you're at peace with all of this? Is this now, because I know you talked about it, I know there was a film made, I don't know if it's been put out, published, but are you at a place now where you've come to peace with things?
Man, Bernard, I don't know if peace is the right word, you
Mhm.
know, but I mean, does it still bother me? It does. Will it always bother me? I'm sure it will, but you know, it doesn't. I think about it every day, multiple times a day, most of the day.
Mhm.
Um, Look, that's just something that changes. Gary Shepard was there, Chris Kraus was there, you were there, Steve Law was there.
Yeah.
So in some way, it's impacted. David Crop's there, or whoever.
Mhm.
Rob Chura's there. Pat Akos is there. In some way, that's impacted, you know, them as well.
Yeah.
So, but I was telling Riley, this was last week. She came to me and she said, Dad, you know, you're right. A lot of this stuff of what you said that's happening to me right now. And I told her, I said, hey, you know what? The Lord, and I'm not getting hooky or anything, but I believe the Lord puts people in certain places, you know. Uh, at the time, you know, Greg was playing pro ball, Chris was playing pro ball. I knew that's where I was going. And, you know, the Lord, I feel like he said, you know what? I got something different for you. And, you know, I just feel like I was chosen that guy. And I told Riley, you know what? Dental school may not be where you're going. It may be what you're doing right now. Or you know, there's a reason. But anyway, I've developed unbelievable relationships at the University of Mississippi who has been unbelievable to me. And you know, beginning with Coach Brewer, who was phenomenal to me. Of course, he recruited me out of high school,
Mhm.
but we developed an unbelievable relationship. And then after him, it was Coach Tuberville, I guess, and a great relationship with him. And Coach Cutcliffe, who, you know, David was at Knoxville when they were recruiting me and stuff like that. And Coach O was great. And then me and Houston Nutt developed a great relationship. And then, of course, Coach Freeze and me and Lane, you know, we don't see each other enough to, you know, develop, you know, that kind of relationship. But the chancellor there, Coach Kayat, out just everybody. And so our oldest daughter graduated from there last year or the year before, whenever it was. And so she'd been with me on a couple of functions, and she said, Dad, I want to go to school here. And so, you know, it's a special place. Well, Dave Crock, and it's where his dad moved. So it's a, you know, Oxford's a neat city. But it, you know, something like that, Bernard, you know, I go to the grave and you said, hey, it's commendable of you. Man, it ain't commendable of me. That's just what people ask me. I said, man, that's just what I do. I don't do it for anybody else. I do it, you know, because that's what I do, you know.
You know, Brad, you and I have never spoken about this. We've hardly talked, you know, since we left school. But I certainly have watched you and kept up with your story and your journey through Dwayne and social media and other things. I know that the ESPN ran that thing a while back, those kind of things. But one thing that I've never been able to express to you, and I hope that you haven't felt this way over the years, even though not many people from our years may not have reached out to you and said something like a virtual or literal pat on the back.
Sure.
I want you to know that I know how many people in our circles were proud of you and love you for what you have done and what you continue to do. And I know that you don't do it for the accolade or the recognition. And I know even this is probably making you a little uncomfortable. But my point is, this is my first time to be able to share those thoughts and those feelings with
Well,
you.
I appreciate that. I get you. You went to school Barbara Walters School of Journalism. Got to make me cry.
Remember Roy Firestone? He used to make all the
Yes.
athletes cry.
So I'm gonna tell you a story on that. I'll never forget the time when I went and first saw Chucky in the first time I ever went and saw him. Okay.
Was this in Memphis or had he?
Yes, when he was still alive, when he was in Memphis, when I hadn't met him yet.
Yeah.
And Coach Brown Watson had said, I've spoken with psychologists, and they don't think it's a good idea for you to go, for you or him, just whatever that means. And so, Bernard, I'm sitting there watching Roy Firestone. He had his show on ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, the guest that night was Jack Tatum from the Raiders.
Yeah, of course.
And and he hit Daryl Stingley and was paralyzed and the whole thing. Yeah. And the whole thing was Jack Tatum was like, "Hey, I was doing my job and I get it. I understand. And I was doing my job and reading the articles and knowing the history of it. I don't think Jack Tatum ever reached out to Daryl Stingley or made contact or anyway. There was this.
Yeah.
So, and Roy Firestone referenced, this year there was an accident. That's when I knew. I said, I don't care what any psychologist or psycho head shrinker or whatever you want to call them has to say. I'm going down there. So I packed my car up that next morning and went.
And you went by yourself?
Oh yeah. I mean, you know what? I do. I've always been independent, and I just enjoy it by myself. Nobody in my family's ever been with me, and because that's kind of a time for me and Chucky, right? So,
yeah. Well, Brad, you got so many guys coming out for you tonight. If I call you a goob, who's talking? Who's calling you a goob?
Good gosh.
Oh, it could be many. I'll give you a hint. It's Drano's brother Jody is saying, "What's up, goob?" Which
Jody's just one of my best friends, and the best well, hang on. The two best dentists.
I was getting ready to say, you better watch yourself.
So
and
no, and Jody has a son, Ashton. I call him Beefcake, and is just a tremendous football player, and there's a future for him as well.
I hope he ends up coming down to UAB and playing for.
I think that's, but Vanderbilt needs to jump on him too.
I know.
That's just you got to do those things. It's when their mother was so important to that university. I mean, she was. You could really argue that Lucy Jones, at one point, is probably, and I mean this with all sincerity, probably one of the most important people in the whole university, because when you're the job that she does is tremendously stressful, and you're raising money and you're going to ask people for money and different things like that. I mean, hey, she's the gatekeeper. And so
Brad, she was finally recognized by being inducted into the Vanderbilt Sports Hall of Fame this year.
About 10, 15 years too late, but anyway,
absolutely.
She deserves everything, every thing she gets. They ought to name a street over there for her.
Pound for pound, strongest lineman.
Doug Bradley.
Say again?
Doug Bradley.
He's on the defense. On the offense, I'm going to give that to Kevin Brothen, who just joined us, as did John Donardi. They're both in the house for you tonight, Brad.
So I saw Kevin. He came to Donaldson Christian. Of course, Kevin's awesome, and he was moving back to Nashville, and I hope he has. And we just hadn't seen each other.
Yeah.
But Kevin's awesome. And my gosh, I hadn't seen John since he left either.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to get him back to campus, but that brings me to a good point now that Dino's on. Vanderbilt plays at UNLV in Vegas in middle of September this year. We need to try to get as many guys to go for that weekend as
Oh
we can.
my gosh, would that be crazy?
It's the weekend of 17, 18, 19th of September.
Well, hey, Donardi will tell you.
He's going to lead the charge.
No, he'll tell you. We had our own Vegas in Thursday nights. Donardi will tell you, me, Donardi, Russ, we'd have some good card games. We had our own little Vegas going.
And I bet those were straight up legit games. There was nobody pulling any pranks or
you're playing for
or
nickels
nothing.
You're playing for nickels, right?
That's right. That's right. Brad, let's talk about the current program. Let's talk about Coach Lee, Team 3. What did you like about this Team 2, particularly in November? They pulled off those 2 wins against Kentucky and Florida this year. What did you like about the team this year?
Well, hey, look, here's the thing, Bernard. You know, and Gary Shepard will tell you this, or any other coach that's watching. John Kropp will tell you this. He was there before. You're coaching at the toughest place in the Southeastern Conference, no doubt. Maybe one of the toughest, in the Power 5 leagues, maybe the toughest. When you have to recruit against Alabama and Auburn and Tennessee and LSU and now Oklahoma and Texas. And I mean, what do you have to offer from Vanderbilt? And so, look, one of the things is you've got to have facilities. So, I mean, in Vanderbilt needs facilities. I mean, and I think that you see with the United campaign that's going on now that they're doing some of these things. But you can't stop there. You can't stop there, and you have to keep going. And you have to keep raising money, and you have to keep building stuff, and you have to have an indoor facility, and you have to have nice locker rooms, and you have to have 900 different uniform combinations that everybody likes. And, I mean, shoot, Luke, if I didn't have Luke there, you wasn't getting anything from Bill Kelly now.
That's right.
I mean, you're getting those grays, and you're getting them socks that are like tan and holes in them, and the elastic ripped off the jock strap and everything else. So,
Brad, do you think they ought to bring back those yellow jerseys that we wore against Florida that game?
We won that game.
Yeah. What do you think
Shepard
about
will tell you we won that game, son.
I don't know if Shep takes the responsibility or the credit for the win, but I think he takes the responsibility and the credit for those uniforms.
The big bananas.
That's right. That's right. Guys, we got a few more minutes with Brad, and I sure appreciate you spending some time and going through a whole lot of great memories, Brad. What do you like about the current college football game? What do you like about the game now? And what don't you like about the game?
Now, this is my opinion. I mean, it would be tough to be a head coach right now with the NIL. I mean, because you don't know what's happening year after year. I don't know how you can't sign a guy and say, you know what, this guy's a project, and we can develop him his freshman year and a little time his sophomore year. You can't do that now. I mean, some of these kids are going to make more money than their position coaches make. And how do you do that? I knew that lesson when Ray Rhodes, when he was the head coach at Philadelphia, came in and he worked me out. He brought me up to camp, and I'm at camp with the Eagles. And I knew this when in my backfield room was me, Ricky Waters, Charlie Garner, Kevin Turner. And so, and let's see, John Gruden was the offensive coordinator.
Wow.
And I knew that how it was when Gruden tells Charlie or somebody at that time, Ricky Waters and Charlie, they're both two of the best tailbacks in the league, and they're fighting because I should be the guy and I should be the guy and this and that. And Gruden, we're in practice. He's Charlie, get in there. He said, I ain't going in there. It's a blitz pickup. He said, I ain't getting paid to pick up blitzes. And I knew then, hey, I know who's making the money, right? So, but it's like in life, man. It changes people and different things like that. So the NILs, that's what you have to coach with now. I mean, who's going to make the money?
No, you're so right about that. And I'm so proud that Vanderbilt's now got 3 different NILs that are in place, and they seem to be gaining some speed. They're adding the different collegiate athletes in the different sports. Anyway, I think Vanderbilt has now got some momentum from that standpoint. So those are good things. I think.
Look, let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, Vanderbilt's not going to do it like Alabama's going to do it. They're just not. They're not going to do it like Tennessee's going to do it. They're not going. There are other things that Vanderbilt has to offer kids. And that's school, or I'm going to say schooling. I'm from Old Hickory. I ain't gonna academics. The schooling, those kind of components like that, And hey, what's important? What's important to somebody? If it's important for a kid to come in and make 50 grand or whatever. And look, that ain't going to last long. I personally don't think there's going to be so much stuff in this NIL that there's got to be some kind of regulation. And I don't know what the regulation is now, but
there's hardly any. That's the problem. It's the wild.
So, and how do you control that? I was saying, hey, I had my own NIL when I was there, but how do you? How do you regulate that? You can't. I mean, you literally can't.
Well, Brad, I could keep you here all night, but I want to be respectful of your time. And man, I have sure enjoyed catching up with you tonight.
Man, this has been fantastic. I love what you're doing, and shoot, I'd love to do it again. And the people that have logged on tonight. It's when you mention those names, man, it just I could sit here and tell stories right now, like Denardi and Arnott's and all that. Oh my gosh. It would be awesome to see some of those guys.
Well, we may have to have Brad on later on, but guys, before there was the Gronkowski brothers, the Gaines brothers.
That's right.
5 years beforehand. I'm telling you. But Brad, thank you, my friend. Stick around let me hang up with the group, but stick around for me for a minute. We're going to keep coming at you every Tuesday night. We've got so many good folks, all kind of Commodores lined up. Keep showing up, guys. I'm glad you showed so much love for Brad tonight. This was awesome. Thank you as always. Don't forget UNLV, September 17th, 18th, 19th weekend.
You need to set something up with that. Seriously. That would be a blast.
I'm working on it. Guys, anchor down.
Anchor down.